Well, welcome everyone. My name's Deborah Pembroke. I'm with the Coalition to End Human Trafficking in Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. Coming from Watsonville, California here. I'm really thrilled to see so many people interested in this webinar. This is the first of a webinar series on resilience, Survivors of Human Trafficking Master Class. So I know I want to particularly welcome everyone. We know we have a lot of people from our local community, but also we've seen quite a lot of interest from the rest of California, from around the country. So I'm really thrilled to see so many of you here. So we developed, this is would have been our third year doing a conference here in our local community on human trafficking. And when it became clear that we needed to transition to webinar series, we also were noticing how much resilient survivors in our community were having to all of the transitions that were happening. And so we saw really an opportunity to create an opportunity for learning. So often people, when they're learning about human trafficking, are learning from people talking about human trafficking survivors, and so many in the anti-trafficking movement and our coalition have really valued understanding that comes directly from human trafficking survivors. And in this case, we saw that even outside of the realm of human trafficking, but also into the realms of just how to live with uncertainty, how to face fear, how to do the things that are being called on for so many people in the community, that there was so much we could learn from our community. So from human trafficking survivors. So really thrilled to be a part of this series. So some housekeeping. All of you who registered would have received a survey series of survey questions earlier today or earlier this week. Please do fill that out. That helps us with our funding as we transitioned our conference, as I said, to this webinar series. You'll also receive the same questions as post questions either later this week or at the end of the webinar series, which is running through May. Also, we have built this to be really interactive, so we welcome you to put messages in the chat and question and answer box, so I'll be monitoring that throughout as the facilitator. I want to also thank Santa Cruz County Human Services Department has worked with us on the conference several years, worked with us on this webinar series, have been really flexible, which I know is one of the definitions of resiliency. Also really have to thank the Monterey County Rape Crisis Center that's been very instrumental in making this possible, and one of our original partners with our coalition. And then it's too many to name, but all of the local organizations that make up the Coalition to End Human Trafficking. Thank you. I particularly want to thank Hive Design and also thank the Santa Cruz Police Department, particularly Julie Schneider, who's been very involved in helping this webinar series. We'll say this again at the end, but this is one of 4 different webinar series. So we also want to invite people back to next month. Each webinar has to be registered individually next week. So this runs every Thursday in May 2020 at noon Pacific time. So on the 14th, we'll be hearing from Carrie Herthel, who will be talking about cultivating resilience. Carrie's a phenomenal survivor leader here in our local community, has deep work in doing bodywork practice, the somatic practices that are so effective in working with trauma. She's developed some bodywork practices. She's also vice chair of the Esalen tribe, the first people of Monterey County, who speak very eloquently to the historical roots of human trafficking in our community, both in how that's manifested in our own life and in the history of our local community, which I think even if you're not here in our local community, there's much to learn in understanding Indigenous communities through everywhere. And all our webinars are available at coalitiontoendhumantrafficking.org/webinars. So enough housekeeping. we're incredibly thrilled to open this webinar series with Sara Kruzan. I first heard Sara's voice when she was a part of a podcast called Ear Hustle. It's a podcast that just this week was announced that it's been nominated for a Pulitzer. It's a podcast that comes out of San Quentin State Prison, a state prison in the California Department, CDCR system. We have 2 CDCR facilities here in our local community, both in Soledad. And this podcast was really a deep learning for myself as a human trafficking survivor about restorative justice, that Sara's deep love and just powerful courage in speaking with a trafficker, teaching the people who did the podcast about sex trafficking, about human trafficking. And it was very healing for me to listen to this podcast. And then it was very powerful to meet Sara. She was the keynote at the GEMS Survivor Leaders Conference, the Emerging Leaders Conference in 2018. And then I got to see her speak in another context that was just so grounded. And I felt, and all of us in the coalition planning team felt, that this would be just a fantastic way to kick off this series. So Sara, it's been just an absolute honor to work with you. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to you.
All right, thank you. It's an honor. I'm deeply moved to have this opportunity. I feel that it's showing us as individuals and how we can move forward to bring forth the healing component that is needed on so many elements of our life and community. So I thank you. And I think each time we have the hard conversations, it's helpful to really evaluate how I show up in a person's life and how the other person shows up in my life and what that impact can bring about, and then being able to neutralize any kind of harm and move forward in that space. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate everyone who has who is participating in this. So, and forgive me, this is my first time doing a webinar, and I think being vulnerable and sharing that space is very imperative for us who have been deeply impacted by violence or restricted or have yet to be able to define our human right to be present. So, okay, so I'm going to go here, right? Deborah, where did you go? And I'm gonna go here.
Here.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna share. And then I'm gonna go slideshow. Thank you, Deborah, for helping me. I love you. Okay. Resilience. The Survivors of Human Trafficking Master Class. I love words, and I think that that's just so moving that this is titled a master class, because I never thought that I would be in that space. So it's called Falling Forward and Reframing Resilience as a Personally Sacred Journey of Vulnerability, because I think that being vulnerable requires an individual to be completely vulnerable and show those moments where we think like no one needs to really know what we're doing. But I think it's in those moments, those dark moments, or those moments like Carl Jung said, or those shadow moments, that we really define who we are. What wolf are we going to feed? To give you a little history, I'm a survivor of human sex trafficking. My indoctrination started when I was 11 years old. And I'm going to pass this on to Deborah so that she can share a little bit more. And I hope that you guys are able to sit and hold space. I invite you to be open and grounded mindful and loving to yourself, because some of what you may hear may be uncomfortable, and it matters. So, okay, Deborah.
Okay, so great, thank you. Just give me a second while I bring this up.
You're amazing.
And before I get started with this, please put in the chat if we think you should be able to see this really well, but if you have any issues, please just put them in the chat window.
I was on a roll, and the principal was on a roll, and I was like an overachiever. I ran track, I ran for student body president. I wrote a book on drugs and its effects, and I won a Young Authors Award. Gigi would start to take me or my little friends to the roller skating or to the mall and stuff and everything. And he was like a father figure. Gigi was there sometimes. And he would talk to me and take me out and like give me all these lavish gifts or do all these things for me and stuff. And then he would tell me that sex-wise, he said, you don't need to give it up for free. He would try to put in my head all these different things and how men really think and how men are. And so I would believe him. He had sex with me when I was 13. And he's a very, he uses his manhood to hurt, like break you in, I guess. Gigi's hours were from 6 in the evening to about 5:30 to 6 in the morning. The girls would bring their money and give it to him. He was like married to all of us, I guess. That's just how they do. Everything was his. The judge sat up there, and I remember my lawyer saying that he wanted to ask for me to be sentenced as a juvenile because YA had found me amenable and susceptible to the treatment. But the judge said that because of my crime, and he said it was well thought out, that I deserved the life without. That means I'm gonna die here. I definitely know I deserve punishment. I mean, you don't just take somebody's life and think that it's okay. So yes, definitely deserve punishment. How much? I don't know. Every day it's something that's not gonna ever go away, you know? I'm very sorry to take his life like that. try to educate myself though, as far as reading books and things like that. But I didn't think I could excel, you know? And who wants to excel in prison? I mean, be all you can be, it's not much. I guess my little heart would tell me that I was worth more. My judge had told me I lacked moral scruples. And I understand that. I had no clue what morals were, and I had no clue what scruples meant. So I had to find that in a dictionary and put the two together, you know, so integrity or, you know, honesty and all these things that I needed to learn, I went ahead and started to build this. If at a parole hearing, I would want to tell the people that, first of all, I've learned what moral scruples are. Second, that every day is a challenge, but I realize that I don't know, I'm nervous, that I found the ability to believe in myself, and that I have a lot of good to offer now with the person who I am today at 29. I believe that I could set a positive example. I'm very determined to show that no matter what you've done or where you've come from or what you've experienced in life, it's up to you to change.
I just want to say thank you for sitting and holding that space. You know, I'm 42 now, and looking at myself at 29, I think it shows the need for us, excuse me, because I'm a parent, how we can do better. So I have fallen, I've fallen forward, and how I've maintained my sense of humanity and integrity and moral scruples, I will be sharing with you as we move on. Thank you, Deborah, for sharing. So as you'll see, falling forward highlights and identifies potential harm when we deny ourselves and others with and in judgment of our authentic truth, such as expectations placed on individuals as they move through the healing. So having to retell, relive equals re-traumatization. And we understand that now through science, that excuse me, every time that we have to retell that moment, our brain deciphers that as if it's happening right here, right now. And I honor everyone who stands up in the public eye and say that they are this person, and my heart goes out to them as they process that, you know, when they're laying down on their pillow. So I'm going to share with you about my personal steps to move through and with healing. There will be an intimate dialogue on accountability, while gently acknowledging internal and external needs of self, others, and interpersonal community support. I feel that a lot of the children that we lock up, speak at and not speak with or to, causes more harm. I think if we can just be able to really understand what we're doing as adults to our children. So here you'll see my bullets: emotional bank deposits and withdrawals. So by that I mean, how many times have I had to emotionally deposit within myself the reminder to breathe, or the withdrawals that, and there's pun on those words, because yes, there are withdrawals, and then there are withdrawals that are taken from me. And what I have found is that the majority of the deposits are not only from myself, but from the women that I have spent the majority of my time with in the community and prison. Out here in the community society, it's been nothing but a liability, and I've had so much taken from me. And so here you see the liability in giving of self to self and to others. So I've been home 7 years, and I may be biologically 42 years old, but my arrested development is still encapsulated in possibly, you know, a late teenager or early 20s. I've yet to really find that neutrality and find that balance in myself, but I'm doing everything that I can to be in that space and also show up so that we can have these hard conversations so that other children are not marginalized or overlooked or considered ignorant. And I say that because so many times I've had people that I've worked with from the MacArthur Foundation, from the advisors to Obama, that I'm so articulate. And I use that in quotations because as if I shouldn't be articulate, as if there's this presumption that my ignorance is what led me into these spaces, and that is not the truth. What I've seen is that the benefits of giving and sharing of self with myself and others has aligned me to be a part of this whole beautiful fabric of the universal collection of us as human beings. And I feel that people chase this insatiable desire to be fulfilled with inanimate objects. And there's this like huge level of consumerism and blah, blah, blah. But really what we need is someone to say, you know what, I see you. I love you. I embrace you. I forgive you. I understand you. Let's do this together. Hold my hand. And that's the power in which I am a reflection of, because what you see in me is a wealth of what was planted while I was incarcerated. So I want to say, what is offering support and what does that look like? I don't believe like offering support comes from a collegiate approach. You can be completely fully informed, fully informed. You can have a master's or a PhD, but you're informed by a collective of information that you have been indoctrinated or conditioned to believe is effective. However, those of us who have been directly impacted by the system, who've had to facilitate our way through a magnitude of trauma and others' compounded trauma, has defined us. And I think there's an intelligence there that has yet to even be defined. So whose needs are really being addressed? Are they yours? Is it your ego? Is it ego? Or is it the person you are helping? And are you able to be objective in that space? Or I really want to ask everyone who's paying attention to this, what is your intention and where are you coming from? And how are you able to be of support? Are you really listening to us? So reframing and offering innovative healing modalities based on global best practices. What I've seen is that the 4 R's, these are not mine, these were taken off of others who've done, who've had the resources and who've done the investigative work, that there's 4 R's that they feel that have come up, obviously, right? A trauma-informed approach. Are we really coming from a trauma-informed approach? Or are we coming from an ego approach? And I think if we can balance that out and set aside our ego, we're able to really be present and offer the sense of love and let go. Realizes the widespread impact of trauma and understands potential paths for recovery. Obviously, what has worked before is not that effective. If it was, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are now, and that is simply my opinion. Another one of the R's is recognizes the signs and symptoms of trauma in clients. I don't like that word clients, is as if it's authoritative. And when things are labeled authoritative, it almost as if it leaves you, it's not balanced. Those who are overseeing the clients have an authority, and that authority tends to impose, again, the ego, my opinion. But trauma in families, staff, and others involved with the system, our community, our country, our world. And I think if mathematically, if someone was ingenious enough to really formulate this and put it in an equation to make it make sense, we would see that it's really simple. If we're able to respond by fully integrating knowledge about trauma into policies, procedures, and practices, I believe that we as persons and humans with having this experience would be able to say, you know what is my purpose here on this earth? Is my purpose to define a sense of hierarchy, or is my purpose here to say we're collective? I am you and you are me. Are we building a quilt of love, or are we feeling like, oh, you know what, I'm a little bit better than you? You have to really think about that, because I think until an individual is stripped of everything that defines them as a person, you don't really know who you are. My opinion, with love. So the last R is to resist re-traumatization. Any therapist who studies or who comes from that space of compounded trauma understands that every single time an individual who's had these personal experiences, their brain deciphers the information as if it's happening right here, right now. Every time a person retells their story, they're reliving it. It's not a form of sensationalism for me. For me, I feel like, okay, we know the information is there. Now, what can we do with it without causing more harm? And how can we move from love? So how honoring the journey, right? My journey is not your journey. Your journey is not my journey. But I will extend my hand to you on this journey and say, let's do this together with compassion, which allows present space and the ability to breathe. So what I've learned, I have 3 professionals who work with me on different levels of my overall essence and being, as well as myself, and what I need to do and be accountable to help move through this trauma and replace those memories of trauma and anguish and horror with love. And how to be courageous in that space while redefining or pushing the envelope of personal healing, as well as being a pillar for others. And I think a lot of times in our work, in our families, in our consumerism, our president, inject yourself with disinfectant. Like, I think that clearly shows that we are not in a space of a collaborative effort to be a part of our essence. And how can we be better? And how can we say, I see your trauma. Let's move with love. Because if not, it's killing us. So right now, I just want to say, let's pause for a minute and check in with ourselves. Take a deep breath and feel if you're breathing from your rib cage, or are you breathing from your lower abdomen? If you're breathing from your rib cage, you're moving in I believe what I've been told by informed practitioners of healing, that we're moving from a space of trauma and it's become toxic. If you hold your breath and your ribs hold that upper part of your lungs in, it's a toxic sense of breath. So how do you breathe? And how do you welcome it with love? And how do you be present? And how do you accept it? So that's what I'm learning, because what toxic stress and trauma does to us is it puts us in this fast forward Wi-Fi, G5, everything's fast, everything's got to be done fast, fast, fast. And you know what? We're exhausted. And I don't believe that that's part of our journey. I personally believe that our practice and our journey is unique. Each one of us is unique. Your journey and presence is unique. Who you are as an individual is amazing. You don't have to conform. You don't have to be conditioned. You don't have to be a consumer. You get to define who you are in a beautiful fashion. And we are an added piece to the fabric of the cosmos. Everything that's in the universe is in you. Everything. So how are we to intend our work and be aligned together with compassion, intention, and presence? I think that's very scary for a lot of us to hold that space. I think that there's like a 3-level process when we connect with people. Oh, I have this nice house. Oh, this is my job. Meet me, right? Those are labels. But if you were to strip yourself of labels, who are you? And if you're that naked and vulnerable, how beautiful that is. And that's when you can really breathe. My opinion, and one of my principles that I follow today.
And Sara,
Yeah.
This is Deborah again, and I just wanted to say the outpouring of support and care for you that's flowing through the chat is overwhelming. So thank you all so much for those comments. And I wanted to make sure you knew before we waited to the end. And we do have some questions, but we can also touch base on that towards the end. But I wanted to make sure you knew there's just, people are really moved by what you shared. People are saying how your words today are just meaning so much to them. So I didn't want to have to wait to the end for you to know how much this community that we have for this next hour is with you.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you to the community. Deborah just shared with me the beauty and the love that you are feeling deeply moved to share. So I say thank you. I'm speaking from the truth and the core of my center heart. I think when we stop and breathe, we're vulnerable and we show it all. And I think that when people want to stick around in that space, then they're intended to be there. And then for those that are not able to understand what that space looks like or feels like, it's okay. There's no judgment. So thank you all. I'm deeply moved. I've spent decades looking at a wall. Trying to make sense of the why. And holding on to my sense of integrity because it matters to me as a person. So as you'll see that this slide says the unintentional, right, is not intentional, our merge of personal trauma and vicarious trauma, and how that merge tends to get like discombobulated and a little murky and a little muddy, and you're like, what do I do? Maybe I'll go put on some fuzzy socks, or maybe I'll have a glass of wine, or maybe I'll do my Sudoku. Whatever it is that we find ways to compress and try to recycle what we embrace and how we feel. As you see, vicarious trauma is the emotional residual of exposure that counselors have from working with people as they are hearing their trauma stories and becoming witness to their pain, fear, terror that trauma survivors have endured. And all of you guys, whether you're a police officer, whether you're a social worker, whether you're a probation officer, whether you're a judge, whether you're a district attorney, whoever you are before you became that. You were a person with an understanding to bring about a change. And sometimes we move from fear, and sometimes we move from ignorance, and sometimes we move from a deep level of, this is going to help me heal. But I think maybe taking a different approach to how we handle our policies and how we hear people who have been directly impacted from violence will change us as human beings and underscore our purpose and fulfill us in ways that consumerism cannot. And some of the symptoms of vicarious trauma is emotional symptoms can include lasting feelings of grief. I identify anxiety or sadness. Behavior symptoms might include isolation, increase in alcohol or substance consumption, altered eating habits, and difficulty sleeping. And yet, you know, here's the thing. I was a case manager for a program that worked directly with people who are homeless and dealing with these issues. What I saw was that my trauma was having an impact on my work, regardless of my benefits, regardless of how much I was getting paid, regardless of my clout or how people in the community would view me because I led with this title. I realized, I was like, you know what? I'm doing a disservice. And I couldn't live with my integrity because I don't know if any of you guys know what it feels like. To have your life taken away from you because you didn't understand integrity or moral scruples. The last thing that I had to hold on to is that, and that's what I will do. So I put in my resignation. And I said, I can't do this job because I'm too attached. What I've learned is that sacred sharing unites authentic intimacy. We can have intimacy with sex. We can have intimacy with these like desires to have a sense of power and hierarchy. Whether it's revving that engine in the car a little bit faster or putting that Hemi in that engine, and whether it's you saying, I'm the chief of this fire department, or whatever it is that fulfills that particular moment. It's never sustaining or fulfilling, and you'll always have an insatiable desire to connect. My belief is that in sacred sharing, you unite an authentic sense of intimacy with all of us. So here you'll see that I put in the definition so that if there's a clarity behind what sacred definition is, and something that is sacred is dedicated or set apart for the services or worship of a deity or considered worthy of spiritual respect or devotion. Rather that deity, tomato, rather that deity is your work, your home, your kingdom, whatever your threshold is. Whatever you define your threshold of who you are as an individual and how you show up in other people's lives is your deity, I believe. And how do you respect that? Is it worthy? Is it worthy of spiritual respect and devotion? Some people have gardens. Some people honor their gardens, and that's their deity. That's who they are. It shows who they are. Some people cook a magnificent meals. Some people are these extraordinary social workers that show up and you're dressed to the T and you're like, this is who I am. But are you worthy of the spiritual respect and devotion, and how are you in that space? So authentic definition means being authentic, coming from a real place within. Who are you? Is it when our actions and words are congruent with our beliefs and values? Only you know that answer. Because I've been there out of fear. I've projected a sense of beliefs and values, but I was uncertain. Am I correct? Am I wrong? Am I being judged? Are people going to look at me? What am I going to do? Okay, who I am, let me look. And you compared myself to this like conditioning of what Americanized belief window is, and I found that to be just unsatisfying. For me it is being myself, not inanimate, or what we think we should be or have been told we should be. There is no should in authentic. So what I invite everyone who's listening to say and look at themselves and evaluate, who are you? Are you placing shoulds on yourself, and are people around you within your arm's distance placing shoulds on you? And if they are, or maybe they're not coming from the most authentic place, and we need to have these hard conversations. So the intimacy definition in a relationship is usually something that is built over time. And new relationships might have moments of intimacy, but the long-term intimacy that characterizes close personal relationships is a building process that will last a lifetime. And at any given time, a relationship might be highly intimate or be lacking in intimacy. And I think innately we know when we're being intimately involved, whether it's a friendship, whether it's our children, whether it's our job, whether it's our work, whatever that relationship, how you define it. You know innately if it feels that it's lacking or it's rewarding, because you'll know. You'll function at a higher vibrancy when it's good. So this section here I cover UnTied in the United. So if you look here, I underlined it. IT, if I switch the letters, it becomes UnTied. And I think for us in the United States, we've become untied. We're not together. We've lost our it factor because we don't have a compassionate approach to reduce harm for children, for our child, or any adult who's experienced sexual abuse as a survivor. But I think that anybody who's experienced abuse, period. And I think that we allow abuse in many forms. So all types of abuse can cause pain, whether our body carries it, whether our mind carries it, whether we show it in with our spouse or our, however, you know where your pain is. You know your pain and psychological distress. And if you're vulnerable enough to speak on it, I think that level of vulnerability will build a quilt of connection. So, we all know that abuse can leave psychological wounds that are harder to heal than bodily injuries, right? Our body is far more intelligent than we are. Survivors of abuse may have intense negative feelings long after the abuse has ended. So you have a lot of anxiety, flashbacks, and trust issues are common in people who have experienced abuse. Here, I'm going to talk about what are the symptoms of moral injury. We can talk about psychological distress and abuse and the physical, it's easier. But what about the moral injury? Not only do we impose on ourselves, but each other. There's a loss of faith. There's a level of depression. There's a loss of meaning. There's a lot of shame, rather that becomes toxic, and guilt, rather that becomes toxic. Are you really able to be vulnerable? Are you really able to be stripped of everything and show up with a sense of dignity? Because I've had to be in that space, and I know a lot of people who have as well. Again, I'm a reflection of them. So moral injury is the damage done to one's conscience or moral compass when that person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent acts that transgress one's own moral beliefs, values, or ethical code of conduct. And here's a link. You can click on it. I invite you all to do your own homework because we're capable. And it enhances us to empower us as people to take the initiative to educate ourselves in ways and not depend on others to do it. I think we've yet to really touch bases on what moral injury is. A lot of folks who've been directly impacted by violence or abuse or sexual abuse, molestation, incest, rape, trafficking, there is such a deep level of moral injury that has occurred that we've yet to even define it. So I hope you're inspired to really think about what that looks like. Here, at least 70% adults have experienced trauma and moral injury. You imagine the unaccountable number of our children and our youth, our community members. So what I saw from the National Council is that there is a direct correlation between trauma and physical health conditions such as diabetes, COPD, heart disease, cancer, and high blood pressure. I have high blood pressure. Never had it before in my life, and now I'm on 2 different types of heart medications. So my Kaiser doctor said, if you don't take this medication, you're going to have a stroke. So the relevance of this is huge because our bodies hold our trauma. And this is just experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their life. So multiply that trauma by decades and years, or a differentiality amongst people. And what are those people bringing? So here are some links for you to, again, look at the infographics for the trauma and the CDC-gov violence prevention. Here you'll see our IT factor, which goes back to the United and UnTied states. I think for us to get it back to the IT factor, what can you do? What can we do? And how will we? Because it's not, it's individualized in some areas, but once you know what your purpose is, I'm going to extend my hands and I want to hold your hand and we can do this together. So there's a sense of accountability. There's sharing from a space of non-judgment, from our own personal beliefs and values. Like, can you really neutralize that? There's a mindful intention of healing, of love rather than punishment. Punishment, scientifically, yes, will make people move faster and push harder, but all that's doing is creating a sense of more toxic stress. And then you have this whole issue with the health, right? Like, do you want to kill somebody before they're even aware that they can live? You want to have some compassion. Pushing the envelope while feeling uncomfortable. I think that that's amazing. If we can do that, then that can increase policy change and reform and bring about inclusive community collaboration for everybody, diversity, marginalized individuals. You know, I will say this, I may offend somebody. I come with a sense of love, but I mean no harm. I feel that for us, as I'm multiracial, I'm Asian, I'm Mediterranean, I'm African American, I'm American African, I'm A negative blood. I share the same bloodline as many royalties. Queen Elizabeth is in my royalty line. But I think that what we need to understand is that to be inclusive, to have a community collaboration, is to set aside any preconceived notions of what community looks like. So I think with that space, we can have a compassionate approach to healing, and we can have a holistic love. Healing works to balance all parts of a person. It encompasses physical wellness, emotional balance, mental health, your environment, and even your spiritual life. Holistic health care is a wonderful support in self-healing and development. So I ask everyone who works with people who've been directly impacted from violence, or your coworkers who have been directly impacted from violence, whether you're a police officer or judge, or you really think about that. Does your checklist include this when you're looking at that person? Are you a little irritable? Do you have high anxiety? Do you not have a lot of pleasure in your life? Is there a sense of derealization? And then you want to ask yourself, what kind of traumatic events like rape, war, natural disaster, etc., are having a huge influence on this individual as they show up? And then you want to say, what kind of alternatives are available for them? Is there an opportunity to have psychotherapy? Is there an opportunity for antidepressants? I'm kind of against that. Or can we bring about alternative treatments? Can I connect with this person? Or am I just saying, oh, he's having a shitty day? Oh, whatever, he's just having a shitty day. Is it a shitty day, or is he really irritable? Is this individual experiencing acute stress disorder? So check your list. There's 9 types of energy healing modalities that I myself have really moved towards, and have found that not only were these modalities effective while I was in prison, but moving away from the indoctrination of what community looks like, of what healing looks like for me. Talk therapy doesn't work, okay? It creates more trauma to where I'm waking up and I'm having nightmares and I'm on like 6 different types of drugs. Like, that's crazy, right? Because while I was in prison, that wasn't the issue, and these are the modalities that I was using. So as you can see, there's quantum touch. And again, I just want to invite every one of you guys to do your own research and see if this sits well with you. If it doesn't, that's fine. I don't want to impose anything. I'm speaking from a space of what has helped me overcome a lot of the sexual abuse, physiological abuse, the memory abuse that my muscles hold, and being able to move forward and honor that space and realign myself. So the EFT, definitely, I found it to be awesome. The Reiki, the quantum touch, that was something that I did not know of until I came home. However, there was a sense of like, I think it's innate for us to connect with our energies. This guy right here, the study of long life, the energy flow. So you want to, what I saw was while I was incarcerated, that there was this like desire to go within myself, and I found a sense of freedom within. And so I saw, I was like, oh, longevitology showed that there was this beautiful sense of connection. And I was like, oh, there's a name for this, right? Like, so a lot of times while I was in there, we would sit on the floor on cracked concrete and eat together and share our experiences, which kind of blends into the wonder method, because it's an emotional comparable to surprise that people feel when perceiving something rare or unexpected, but not threatening. And that's exactly what that was. There was this wonder method of us sitting on a cracked cement prison floor, sharing a meal of inclusivity and love and diversity. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. It built a bond that connected us to the human nature, and it drove our curiosity in ways that helped us really define us. Restorative touch it seeks to support health, healing, and spiritual evolution. I think restorative touch helps individuals who've been traumatized by sexual violence to get back into their body. And the Brennan healing science. So I found this to be quite fascinating. The founder of Brennan Healing Science, and she's a world-renowned leader, healer, teacher, and former NASA physicist, and best-selling author of Hands of Light. So like what it says here is Brennan Healing Science is a specialized form of integrative medicine and method of energy healing taught at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. This is a spiritual system that works with the client's consciousness and energy fields to heal people on a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual level. Her work, I've done a lot of research. The fact that she was a NASA physicist, she deeply understands a lot more than maybe myself. I'm considered a commoner in comparison to her experience. But we, as human beings, we're energy fields. And I invite you again to do the research on your own heart. Your heart moves from a frequency of energy. Each beat, each 1, 2, 3 beat is energy. There's electrodes that run through your heart. And without that, we would not be. So I think Brennan, Barbara Brennan, was able to really understand and create that connection as us as healing beings. Because for me, a lot of this has worked. So the Theta Healing is a registered trademark for a process of meditation created by Vienna Stabal. Practitioners claim it teaches people to develop new natural intuition through changing their brave wave cycle to the theta waves with the intention of exploring how emotional energy affects a person's health. What I want to say here is that the plasticity of our brain shows that regardless of what we've experienced in our life, if we recharge ourselves or move through a different process, then that healing can really take place. What I have found is it's a beautiful space to be in. So the crystal sound bowls, I think these are great. I've given many of these away to people. Wraparound services in Los Angeles, for those that work with people who've been directly impacted by trauma and who have acute stress levels of trauma. So they're frosted classic crystal bowls, and they're manufactured from 99.99% pure quartz crystal. So the alchemy bowls are quartz combined with gemstones, sacred metals, and minerals. And they all have their unique character and tone, and each one is developed and created in a way to let go of a certain hertz of frequency that our cellular level, our DNA and our RNA are able to connect with. Phenomenal stuff. They are called the purest tone in the world, and the sound has been called heavenly. So I have one here, and I'm not gonna take too long, but I want you to know that I practice this, and it has helped me to become more grounded and rooted. So just take a moment to breathe, check in with yourself, see where you're at. Breathe. My energy is going to resonate. I have found this practice to be one of the most healing opportunities for me to come back and be present. It's mindful, and I think if we change policy to be inclusive of these variety of healing modalities, I think that we as first responders, or however you want to define yourself, will be able to do a more effective job and offer people what is their need, tailored to meet their specific needs, not our needs, or the collegiate approach. So here are some links that I've included for everyone to explore and see if it fits, if it's something that you're interested in. So as I come to a close, I would love to acknowledge and identify potential compassionate solutions to bring about change for healing and honoring the traumas of self, others, our community, and our nation. And may this holiday season you give the gift of love and healing through intentional connection. And I purposely put Christmas colors. You know, a lot of us run out to buy gifts that will last for the moment or create a memory. What if we made an agreement to say, okay, this year for Christmas, I'm going to give the gift of love, or I'm going to give the gift of support, or I'm going to give the gift of understanding and compassion, and vibe off of that frequency. And how will that change the way that we connect as people? What will our quilt look like? So I just want to say thank you to Coalition to End Human Trafficking. It's important to breathe. It's important to connect. And it's very imperative for healing to embrace each other for the unique experiences that we can bring to share. So thank you. And I honor each and every one of you guys.
Well, Sara, thank you so much. We have quite a number of questions, but before we move to the questions, I really wanted to make sure you heard, you know, I just the outpouring that has been coming through the chat window. I think there may be more than we're able to get through, but I just wanted to read some with you. And there's just, I just really want to thank everyone who dropped their own wisdom and their own pieces of resilience. And I think I'm going to not share names, not that it's not important to us, and we'll be looking at these who have said this, but just because we don't know where people are around confidentiality. But one person says, when I felt the most free is when I stopped defining myself by things. So humbled for your sharing, and thank you so much for your message to us. I agree with you with regards to vulnerability and nakedness and breath. We are all stardust. And this is probably a question from 45 minutes ago, or a rhetorical question that you asked, but yes, you are amazing and brave, and I am so grateful to be able to hear you and your story. Your words are full of wisdom, and I see your heart. You are beautiful. Thank you for being you and for sharing here with us. I'm grieving for you. You never belonged in a cage. You are amazing, and you definitely have a purpose, and I thank you. And I thank you too, Sara. Thank you all. There's so many more questions and comments in there. We have had over 170 people on this webinar, which is far more than we dreamed. But we also had some questions that came in that I know will really help people in their everyday work in prisons, in work with survivors, trafficking survivors, survivors of all kinds of trauma. So one question is, I would love to hear any suggestions you have for an alternative word for client.
I would want to say beautiful soul, because they are. They're a beautiful soul. And I think that if you acknowledge them in that space, they'll be able to breathe. They'll be able to inhale and exhale and let it out. So, beautiful soul.
Beautiful. So someone just says, I work in the prison system. I'm so grateful for what you have shared, Sara. This may be covered later. I think this came in a little bit earlier, but I would appreciate hearing what was most helpful to you to fall forward while incarcerated, and what you felt like you needed that you didn't or couldn't access in prison. And thank you so much.
I think for me, what was the most authentic experience for me for accessing in prison was the innate sense of connection that I found. So I was in an 8-woman cell the majority of my time, in a very small cell with 7 other women who came from very diverse experiences, and we were able to find a fluidity of love and support in that space. And I think that's what grounded me when I saw that no matter what we were there for, we were able to come together. And even if our authorities didn't think that we knew what we needed, we still held on to that. It's connection. It's 100% connection without judgment. That builds family, healing, and community. To this day, I have friends that are still serving time, and I've been away from them, and I have a cup of coffee in the morning. Even if I don't want it, I have it, because somehow I know that she's having her cup too. And I'm never going to give that up. It's really small. It's not big. It's just saying, you know what, I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to hold your hand because I love you. I see you. I honor you. And we can do this together. And it's that simple.
You know, just feeling the incredible warmth of which frankly didn't know was possible through the format of a webinar. And I know all the muted people who have your back and just really wanting to understand this wisdom to put it in practice in our own communities for survivors today and for incarcerated people. I know I'm reading a lot of very specific appreciation for the particular modalities that were useful for you when you were incarcerated. I know for myself, as someone who works with people in works with men in these two CDCR facilities in Soledad, California, is sometimes people have so few resources, and you know, working with breath, because we know breath is always available, working with just what we know from people that is possible to work from them, listening to incarcerated survivors about what works. But you gave us really, I mean, this is a masterclass. You gave us so many deep tools to be able to work with people incarcerated or not. So thank you. And there's a lot of people mentioning how powerful the bells, not the bell, the singing bowl. So thank you for that.
Yes, I think that I wish that would be a part of the curriculum, that, I mean, whatever, it's part of something that we need while we're there, because it is so stabilizing for us to move away from the high level of acute stress of just the environment. And if we had a class that was consistent, it would ground people and bring us together, and we can do it together. I think that we can blame all day long, but if we know solutions and we're not offering them, then really who's the one to be held accountable? We have the resources to do it.
Well, we're going to take questions for about 5 more minutes, but I'm going to do a little process switch. If you have a question you'd really like to have Sara answer here while we're together, we're getting a lot of things in the chat, and we're going to share everything with the chat with Sara. But if you have a question that you know will be a benefit for everyone about working with these issues, building resiliency, you could put it in the question and answer window. Just because while we've been talking, we've had 35 different messages in the chat, and I think a lot of it's mixed with other appreciation. So we have another question here from, oh yeah? Oh yes, I think we're all in for a treat. I got a little preview of what's about to come. So Sara's coming back. And speaking of different healing modalities, I think we're about to witness one of Sara's.
Yes. This is my guy. This is my healing guy, my healing girl. Do you want to say hi? Come on, come on. Hi. Yeah. Say hi. Say hi. Yeah. Huh? Really?
Too much.
Oh, jeez. Really? I like you. I know. Thank you. I know. I know. I know. You're the best.
And Sara, did you say this little munchkin is a support animal?
This is my therapy little support animal through trauma. Yeah, my little girl. She's amazing. She's a sleepy little girl. You are. Yes, you are. It's such a love. Oh my God. Oh, jeez. Oh, what did I do? What did I do to get this? Stop it.
Too much resiliency.
I'm saying. She's amazing. I take her with me wherever I go now. It's helped me to realign myself with touch and being present in my essence. So
Which is so challenging for so many human trafficking survivors of so many different kinds of trauma to heal in our bodies. And, you know, healing touch can mean so much.
It's safe.
So a question here is, for the healing modalities, do you think that something like exercise or boxing or just hitting a heavy bag would be beneficial?
I want to say no, because that might possibly encourage more of the ire, the anger, the frustration, which is secondary. I think if we can get to the core of the emotion, we used to do laugh therapy. We would be in the room, close custody, and we would just start randomly laughing, fake laughing. And what would happen is that we would all end up laughing. And then it would create this beautiful space of like creativity and connection. You know, we did things like, so we did the laugh therapy. We did chocolate parties where we would indulge on the weekend. And we created spaces where we would use our imagination and be at the beach. And there was this station that would come on that would play the waves at a certain night, and we would use lamps and get our towels and put our sunglasses on. And, you know, I guess that was the old school virtual reality for us, but it took us there, and it allowed us to create a reality that wasn't in line with our present, but it was very healing and connecting. We also did this one experience where I was like, I love you too. Oh gosh, all the time. I invited all the elders in the unit to an evening, and then I invited all the young people. You know, just this silent invite. No one needed to know who was doing it. Nothing. It was anonymous, and if they showed up, they showed up. I said, bring something that, you know, defines your soul and who you are as a person. And it'll be a potluck because food brings people together. And the turnout was amazing. So you had these people, these elderlies in wheelchairs, sharing their stories of love and life and pictures with these young girls in prison that had life and stuff, sharing their dreams or aspirations before the trauma happened. So there was this like community that took place, and it unfolded so organic and authentic. And it was beautiful. And the ties to this day are still very much there. You know, I think it's just about how you can be creative to connect people and find that commonality amongst us all.
Mm.
What? Really? Okay.
Well, I see that we still have a significant number of our attendees who are still here and with us. So I want to make sure everyone knows this is going to be recorded. We do have a few more questions, and so I'm just going to suggest that we go a few minutes over to try to get through at least a few more questions. Everyone who's here will have access to the recording, so if you do have to leave, we did say this would be an hour and 15 minutes. You needed to leave, you can still have that this shared information from Sara and that recording that we'll make available. So we'll probably go 5 or 10 more minutes just to, because the questions are really quite good, and we still have quite a lot coming in. As a helper/advocate, how do you make a decision to take a break of leaving the field when you feel that you have reached an intense level of burnout?
Absolutely. When you're at the intense level, you know, your heart, mind, body, and soul knows. Your mind may try to fight you because there's a condition to believe that you need to show up. But I think that you need to listen. I inspire you, encourage you to listen to your body and take that time. There's enough of us here. It's a relay. It's not a one person. And you take your break, and when you're ready, you get back in. If not, pass the torch and it's okay. If it's heavy, it's time to take a pause and love upon you, because what are you giving from? And if it's harming you to give, you can't do that. No cry. No cry. Okay. Go on.
What do you think is the most important quality that a first responder should express when trying to support a person experiencing trauma?
Coming from a space of being neutral, setting aside your personal beliefs, values, and really listening to what that person needs and tailoring the resources to fit what that individual needs at that time. At that time, where that person is. You bridge to them. And whatever it is that that individual needs at that time, their perception of what it is, then okay, because their threshold is limited. It's not about us. It's not about our education. It's not about what we may know best. It's about compassion and meeting the individual where they're at. That, I believe, shows a sense of wisdom and intelligence, emotional intelligence, to identify their needs. Not impose what we think their needs are. And offering safety, 100% safety. And ask them, what does that safety look like to you? And then from there, create that safety net for that individual. And then start the work, because nothing's gonna heal until the person feels safe. They don't they may not even know what safety feels like.
So such valuable information. Thank you. So another question is, how do you work best with a survivor to determine if they're ready to take on a survivor leadership role?
I think that is defined by that individual. I think that sometimes us as individuals, I'm going to remove myself from the survivor space and look at it from a professional space and say, oh, this person is exhibiting these great qualities, they have leadership qualities, but you need to have a balance, because I see 3 different therapists and I'm a survivor leader. However, the framing that I've been imposed on and projected in when I first came home caused me to re-traumatize myself and put me in a place where for a period of time, I thought coming home it appeared to be more harmful than loving, because of the level of expectations or how I needed to show up, and I didn't even know. So I think that with the survivor, it's very imperative to check in and then say, you know what? Again, what are these emotional deposits, and what are the liability, and how are you going to give and give out? If a survivor is giving, what are you going to give back? Are you going to say, you know what? Thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. How about you go get some body massages? How about you take some time and sit with yourself? How about you go for a walk in a Zen garden? Or how about, you treat yourself to whatever it is. I'm going to send you some Epsom salts and soak, or a candle and some fuzzy socks. I think that whatever is given, how can we replace that? It doesn't necessarily have to mean with a verbal conversation, but how can we hold ourselves, us as survivors, with love? It's really simple. And I think that that's imperative, because us who've been trafficked, we know how to give a lot to where it's killing us, to where we're depleted. We've mastered that ability to hide what depletion looks like, but then we're disconnected. And to be invited back to self and be present and mindful and breathe requires a lot of energy. So a simple act of kindness to restore that, I think, is beautiful. We recycle benevolence, I think.
If I can also step out of the facilitator role and just say a few things on that as well, if that's all right. That we want to make sure people know that there's so many ways for survivors to be involved in the movement, that there's often a push to public speaking. There's often a push to have the role be much more big and public, before that would be a natural progression for the development of any activist or any leader. And we want survivor leaders, particularly in the survivor leadership community, to not experience exploitation, to have this be a process where they're gaining, and it's their own voice that's able to come forward. And so there's just so many ways to be involved, that aren't necessarily public, don't involve telling their story. And so really expanding what we think of as survivor leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for that question. So I was thinking, why don't we do one more question? I'm going to go ahead so we can close right after the question, and you can end the webinar for us. But before we close, I did want to remind people to please fill out the post-survey questions that we'll be sending out. I did hear from a few people that they had some problems with that survey. Sounds like just a few people, but if you did have problems, you can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. And I especially want to invite all of you back to our following 3 webinars. Next week on May 14th at noon Pacific time, we have Carrie Herthel. Really want to invite you all back to that webinar and to all our future webinars. So because we have a phenomenal number of people who will be speaking. So as a final question, if you know a youth who's experienced homelessness and recently was able to get away from a human trafficking scenario, what is the best resource to connect them without being overwhelming and still being able to use resources available to house the youth as soon as possible and get the holistic support? This is someone who's asking this as a caseworker.
What I believe is that I've worked in transitional homes that service emergency for sex trafficking survivors that had already kind of like aged out. I don't think that we have a system in play that is tailored to meet the needs of these individuals. I think that they're forced to be placed in environments that are not safe. And I feel we can do better. I feel that we can create a space for survivors to feel safe and loving and not just accept what we have now. We can push the envelope and create what is needed. And I think being proactive and being an advocate in that space is so important. We have the funds. We have the funds to make this happen. And what does that look like? A safe place, a home that nurtures, not juvenile halls, not locking kids up, not confinement. I know girls run away, I know boys run away, but I think, again, there's an innate intelligence for us who are young and have had adults impose harm. And so we navigate from that space. And when we know there's no harm, we'll be still. But if we feel threatened and then we feel there's harm, we'll run. I've yet to really find a place or see a place that honors that for us. I say us because I'm still attached to that, as you know. I think we can do better. We have the ability to do better and the resources to do better. And I think that there are therapeutic modalities like a center that addresses the trauma is huge, but not a lockup place, not a group home, not a foster home. So with the resources that are already out there, I think there's a limitation. And I think maybe bringing in people who are of the community to help foster or hold spaces, or if they have resources or rooms to foster these youth in a way, or adults in a way, with an understanding, a community healing space, like, hey, I got a room. We can do this together. I think that would honor the person. I mean, it was the community that destroyed the person in the first place. Meaning members of the community bought the child, right? So why can't we neutralize that?
That's so well put, Sarah. Thank you so much. We hope to see so many of you at future webinars following weeks. And just thank you so much for your wisdom and your presence and all that you've shared with us.
Been an honor. Thank you.